For most people, John Steinbeck's classic novel, The Grapes of Wrath, gives a glimpse into what an existence passing for a life as a farm laborer must have been like. Following the loss of their family home during the Great Depression, the Chavez family, as so many other displaced families, would migrate throughout the Southwest in search of mere subsistence. They would toil in fields and vineyards as they struggled to support their families, often at the expense of their health and human dignity. Young Cesar Chavez would quit school and begin life as a migrant laborer at the age of 10 years old. The Chavez family, like the fictional Joads, would settle in California. Steinbeck would describe the history of California as one riddled by oppression and virtual economic slavery. With a limited formal education, Cesar Chavez, at the age of 18, would briefly leave the fields of Delano to answer the country's call, enlisting in the United States Navy in World War II. In 1952, while working in the orchards, Chavez would meet Fred Ross, an organizer for the labor advocacy group known locally as CSO, or Community Service Organization. Within a short time, Chavez would become a full-time organizer, spearheading voter turnout drives as well as taking on the challenges and hardships of racial and economic discrimination. In 1962, Cesar Chavez would resign this position to found the National Farm Workers Association, explaining that if you're outraged at conditions, then you can't possibly be free or happy until you devote all your time to changing them and do nothing but that. But you can't change anything if you want to hold on to a good job, a good way of life, and avoid sacrifice.
Nothing happens without people. People is the power. Nothing happens without people. The great social dreamers confine their ideas to books and they rot there. They rot because you don't have people to move it. People is the motive force.
In September 1965, Chavez's NFWA would stand with an AFL-CIO-backed union led by Larry Italong, comprised largely of Filipino farm workers. The protesters would stand against unfair labor conditions and for fair and reasonable wages. By 1965, the two groups would merge to form the United Farm Workers Union. The newly combined union would initiate the now famous Delano grape strike against leading table and wine growers. Chavez would successfully lead a 5-year strike and boycott, beginning with the historic farm workers' march from Delano to the state capital of Sacramento. Strongly influenced by the lives and writings of Gandhi and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., the United Farm Workers, under the leadership of Cesar Chavez, would adhere to the tenets of nonviolent protest. In 1968, hoping to bring attention to the plight of striking workers, Chavez would engage in what will become one of many hunger strikes over the course of his life, inspiring millions of supporters to the cause of the United Farm Workers. Chavez would encourage all Americans to boycott table grapes as a show of support. By the 1970s, most table grape growers came into compliance with the terms and conditions of Chavez and the United Farm Workers. Throughout the 60s, 70s, and 80s, the work of the UFW would inspire, march alongside, and organize strikes and boycotts all over the country. This not only brought higher wages and better working conditions, but in fact led to the passage of the California Labor Relations Act, guaranteeing collective bargaining rights to farm workers. Many years have passed since the death of Cesar Chavez on April 23, 1993. While no one person can achieve great movements alone, greatness is measured not in how well known a person is, but rather in the actions of how people live their lives. Long after our names and faces are remembered or forgotten, that which is important in memory is carried on in the hearts and minds of those to whom such lives had an influence. The memory of Cesar Chavez is celebrated annually in California as a state holiday on March 31st. More than observing a holiday, let us honor such courage and sacrifice in how we serve our fellow man.